everyone. We have got the writer-director, and some of the cast members here of Summering, which is premiering at Sundance. We've got James Ponsoldt, Lake Bell. We've got Sarah Cooper, Ashley Madekwe, and we've got Megan Mullally. James, this is, I hate to use this word because it's so, I think, overused, but this was a very refreshing family film. Can you tell me a little bit about what was behind your interest to create this project?
I mean, most specifically, it was being a parent, and I have 3 young kids. And I think a lot of it was born out of conversations I was having with all of them, but especially my daughter. As sort of I was, looking for movies to show her and talking about TV shows and books that I read when I was a kid, things like that. I think I sort of rewound in my memory and realized that when I was a kid, that the stories that I had that were sort of either coming of age stories or stories about first brushes with mortality and death, there were quite a few of them, and they always had male protagonists. And my sister, who's really influential on me, as was my mom, didn't have that luxury. Like oftentimes they'd have to project themselves onto narratives about young boys, or maybe there was a sister character or something. But I think, I wanted to make a story that was chiefly about female friendship and about hope and anxiety and fear, a platonic love story. And I think that just inverted a lot of tropes. I think also, this is an aside, but I'm a big lover of like mysteries, thrillers, film noir, things like that. I think there was also an awareness that like so many of those, virtually all of them, involve a dead woman and men who will solve the murder, or men who will self-actualize because of the murder, or men who will finally get in touch with their father, or something that really has nothing to do with female agency. So I think it was that really has nothing to do with female agency. It's chiefly rooted in that, a desire to make a story about female friendship and hope about the future at a very specific moment, at the last sort of dying gasps of childhood, pre-adolescence, when you might still use imagination to process trauma.
Yeah, I'm remembering there was definitely a moment in the film where one of the kids is repeating what her mother says about crime shows, and it's like it's always men going after women and the other women the other men who save them.
Yeah, and I found it increasingly problematic as a parent. This was written before sort of COVID stuff began a couple of years ago, but it sort of took on new meaning, and there's a brand new lens through which, like, my wife and I, the conversations that we have with our kids, when they say, is everything going to be okay? Are you going to come home today? Should I be afraid? Things like that. These abstract fears have felt much more real. And I think for a lot of kids, the fear of losing your best friend might be more precise or real or front of mind than the fear of death. Not always, but and I think that's just shifted in a way. And I think so much of this film, I think, is a conversation that I think some version of a conversation that I've had with my kids, that my wife has had, that my co-writer Ben Percy's had with his daughter, and I think that we're all having with each other, because I think the way that we deal with fear and anxiety and sort of this questioning of, is it going to be okay? Is it going to return to normal? Whatever that means. I think we're all wondering that.
So as much as this movie is about, these girls as they're getting ready to enter middle school, it's so important to the story is their mothers and their relationships with their mothers and their, the different parenting styles and the different, the different temperaments that they all have. And so for our wonderful cast here, I'd love to hear from each of you just a little bit about what was attractive to you about this project.
For me, I hadn't worked in a while, and I was coming off of a sort of traumatic experience, and I'd worked with James fairly briefly on Smashed. And it was such a great experience. And he's such a sweet guy and, really lovely to work with, and no drama and very, chill. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe because I hadn't acted in all that time. And I thought, okay, I could do that and take a chance and go onto this set. And it was great. And he is lovely, and that's reflected in, the other people that he chooses to work with.
I think I love James's work, and, James, you're like a mensch of Sundance, you're just like a solid, kind, spirited person that I share that kind of ethos when taking on movies myself, to make. And I think that is a huge draw, which is especially, this story is unique in that it is, a Sundance comrade, but doing something for a younger audience, which I think as a mama to two littles, I was it's refreshing. And I love in general this idea that we can open up the world of independent film to younger audiences and allowing them to sort of ingest those flavors and start to like build a good taste, And so this is a way of looking into, my daughter suffers from anxiety in general, like it's just there innately. She has epilepsy too. So she has to deal with, she's thinking about big things at 7 years old. And so the idea of thinking about and traversing, through complicated adult type subjects when you're young is there is a dearth of that kind of reflected in movies for family. And so that I think was a big draw for me. And I got to be a cop, and my kids were like, well, you've made it. So.
And she looks gorgeous, even in a cop uniform, believe it or not. First time that has ever happened.
Especially in the cop uniform. I thought it was very sexy.
Sure.
I felt like my kids I would send them so many selfies. I think, James, I was there. I was like, hey, I know you're like writing, directing a movie right now, but could you just like take a couple of good shots? Because my kids were just like, well, you're our hero. You weren't before, but now you are.
I really related to it. I don't have kids, but I remember I'm an immigrant. I was born in Jamaica, and when I came here, I made my first best friend, Stacy, and we would just go down to this like little creek and look at frogs and, take these little leaves and put rocks on them and make up these little stories. We had this little we'd marry crickets. We'd take two crickets and tell them they were getting married, and we'd have them walk down this little aisle. I mean, we just had all these things that we would do, and it was so much fun. And it was, as an immigrant, you come here, your family's like, oh, it's your family. My parents didn't really know, oh, you're supposed to make friends. And, she was like my first best friend. And I really love this story from that perspective of these little girls just forming this bond that you feel is going to last them the rest of their lives. And you don't get to see little girls have these adventures. And so I loved it from that perspective.
Everything I'm going to say is going to repeat what everyone else said. I'm a huge fan of James and his work. And
I forgot to say that, yeah.
Yeah, see? And I really loved the script. It reminded me of summers growing up in London, even though it isn't set there. I grew up on a councillor's estate, and there was like a huge crew of us that would play together every day. And we call it the 6 weeks holiday in London, that summer break. And I remember it always feeling like forever. It was like the longest, most special, magical time of the year when you got to play outside for 6 weeks with your mates. So yeah, it reminded me of that. And I wanted to be involved. Yeah,
James, Lake, I'm glad that you brought up something that I think is important, which is, there are so many kids, and I think every kid in their own way is dealing with really tough things that can kind of, it's like the realities of life. And those, that's often absent from a lot of movies that kids watch. It seems like there's kind of a level of bravery to really try to put that out there as something that kids can watch, and maybe watch with their parents to help them process some of the things that life throws at them.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't approach this film any different than any other film. It's a multi-generational story. There's there are parents who are both trying to protect their kids, but also push them to live fearlessly, you know, and live honestly, and while they are dealing with their own issues, and which I think is something we can all relate to. You know, there's questions of what's our responsibility to our neighbors or to strangers or to anyone as a community. Like how do we judge the quality or decency of someone else's life as part of this? And of course, this is a story that deals with anxiety, death, suicide, like things falling apart, like the fear of it, families, friendships, you know, all of those things. I think they're all sort of present in this film. So, I mean, my hope would be that, you know, I mean, I think I look back, you know, at the kids in this film as a parent now with a level of revisionism, probably trying to measure it against my own childhood and knowing that it, you know, that it was probably it was more problematic when I was a kid. And in some ways there were different safeties, but I think there's hopefully a dialogue between generations in the film.
You know, this lack of female characters that we see in Summering, is that something that you ran into in your own lives growing up as you were reading and watching movies and watching TV shows where, you know, you felt like it was kind of overwhelmingly male? Or, you know, what were the stories of about girls and about women that you held on to?
The Babysitters Club. I read all of those. They didn't read, I don't think they were ever in real peril though, but I remember them and they meant a lot to me at the time. And then Sweet Valley High.
Oh my God, I was just about to say that.
Real stuff went down in Sweet Valley High. Especially when they got to like 17, 18.
I feel like I didn't even notice. I mean, I feel like what James was saying was about you try to be the little boy. I mean, I didn't even really notice, oh, wait, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of this little white kid. And I just did. I didn't even think about it until I got older and realized, oh, it would be nice to, you know, because it's different. I mean, you know, little girls play, you know, differently and they talk to each other differently and they you know, have different dreams and hopes. And I mean, it's a whole world that this film just explores so beautifully.
One thing I loved, it seems like there was this kind of current running through the film where, you know, the girls were all, I guess, you know, they were kind of like calling on a bunch of different stories, narratives, like whether it's religion or, you know, kind of magic and new agey kind of stuff, or CSI and other crime shows. You know, they're using these things as like a frame of reference to help them deal with this really harrowing thing that, like, you know, is a huge, very real thing that would be a lot for anyone, but especially for little girls. So yeah, James, what was kind of your approach with all that and kind of calling these, I guess, myths and narratives up as a way for your characters to deal with the events in the film?
Stories, whether they're in books or whether they're films, I think they're how we make sense of the world. They're how we create constructs to put what can seem like an orderless reality into some kind of order. And whether that for you, you know, is organized religion or esoteric religion, or whether it's CSI and the Profiler or Ghost Hunters, you know, I think we all have these boxes that help create structure for our fears, you know, and I think that can help us in times of trauma. So yeah, I think it's very natural. And, you know, I mean, personally, I mean, I related to each of these girls, and they're all, and their mothers, all of them, they're all people that I know and love, or some doppelganger of them.
Some of the best parts of family films, you know, not to put it in a box, but is that, you know, there are those moments that are definitely, you know, you need to be a little bit older to catch what's going on. Like one of the kids' mothers is like, you know, tells the dad, like, oh, make sure you light the candle because he's doing his after dinner thing, you know, which is really great. So how did you, you know, was that intentional to write this in a way that would resonate with different generations?
For me, like a lot of my favorite films, I think if you look at international cinema, whether you're looking at Ozu's films in Japan or the Apu films in India or the Antoine Doinel films, the Truffaut films, pick it, like, or Kiarostami's films in Iran with kids. There's a lot of complicated portraits of the emotional inner lives of young people, just like there are of the elderly, which feel to me, I'm generalizing, but quite forgotten in like a lot of mainstream American cinema. We like stories about people that are like safely consumer age, I think. But we live in relationship to families, to people that are older and younger than us. We don't always see them on screen. So there was definitely a hope to have that just feel rich and as natural as life.
For any of you, do you think that this film could be a kind of model for a way that movies can deal with these tough issues in a way that
I think just James saying that about, just sort of like looking at a more through an international lens of who we decide gets to be the protagonist and how we kind of, even in just age diversity, it's like if you're not consumer age, then you're not the one who we're pinpointing. I'm like in a storm in my head about like all of this. I'm just like, oh my God, is that true? Am I guilty of that? But I do think that on a broader scope, right, we have the opportunity to, show children that they are important too, that even elderly, protagonists as well, like the human experience and the human condition continues through all different times in our life and conditions. And so I do think, setting the tone and giving a younger mind the opportunity to kind of see stories that reflect kind of the anxiety of the nation at this time, but it's not talking about it directly. I think that there's such power in that. It's an important challenge to provide really thoughtful, storytelling and narratives to younger minds and sort of giving them the benefit that they will, of the doubt that they will get it. They'll get more than you realize. It's like they'll get the stuff that you think they're not going to get. I mean, that's my biggest, thing as a parent is just like, yeah, they got it all of it to the point, the stuff that's not said, especially, the unspoken Wi-Fi that goes through your house, that is the anxiety of the nation, and it's all there, even if they're just 4 or 7, you see it. It's like, oh, they're having a tantrum about the chicken fingers touching the peas, but really they're having a tantrum about the pandemic. Do you know what I mean?
That was me. If my chicken touched my rice, I was livid. And I was
yeah. It's like, why is there such an invention? Yeah.
Why are these things touching each other?
And I think to this day, right? For you. Still at Crafty, you were
2 separate plates for the chicken and the rice, please.
I mean it.
The socioeconomic status of the different characters too, like Lake's character having a different experience than everyone else. And I feel like being able to see those different stories hopefully sparks people like, oh, I have a story that's similar that I want to tell, and so I think that was really awesome to see as well. Yeah,
I think the idea of kids absorbing what's around them, we see it in the movie where, they're a little young to be watching CSI, but they're still kind of absorbing the ideas that are put out there and the death and the violence and the, it's all there for them to kind of see, even if it's not meant for them or kind of them directly consuming it.
Right. Or if they have to keep it secret from their parents because they know it, but they're not supposed to know it.
Yeah, that's weird, isn't it? I remember that growing up, the things that I wasn't supposed to be watching, but I was and could fully understand, but would pretend that I didn't.
Right.
My brother had no such pretense, though. I think by the time I got to their second child, they were over it. Like my brother was watching Terminator 2 at 5. No one knew that was an issue.
I remember I had a Bob Marley poster up in my college dorm room, and he was smoking a spliff. I don't know. I'm not. Anyway, so my dad comes in and he's like, Sarah, that's marijuana, And I'm like, Really? I thought it was just a cigarette, Dad. Like, I played dumb. I mean, we're Jamaican. It shouldn't have been a big deal, but it was a very big deal for some reason.
When did you shoot this movie?
We shot it in the summer. We shot it in Utah. We shot it when it was like 105 degrees most days, and when a lot of the Western United States was on fire. So it felt, if there was an existential angst about America being in flames or the world being in flames, it felt quite literalized while we were filming this.
God, it never could get better. Jeez. Gosh, just seems to get worse. What
was the experience like for all of you coming together to collaborate on something during the pandemic? And I'm wondering, it's obviously very different from the work that you all do before the pandemic, and it's changed, but has the pandemic kind of shifted, given you any new insight into how collaboration can look and what it can do?
This was my first time working in the pandemic. I was just excited to work. I was so over being at home. I think that it was, I didn't really know what to expect. I had friends who'd worked on things in other states where it was kind of more intense. The thing I missed the most was like seeing the crew's faces. It's impossible to know who anyone is. It's hard to connect. It's easier for the actors. We get to see each other's faces, but yeah. Lake was really bad at eating with her shield on.
That's not true. I did great. I was 6 feet apart. A lot of shield at work. But you know what? I think what Ashley said is true. Is like the biggest thing, the headline you'll hear from pretty much everyone in working in COVID is just not being able to connect, because you're getting a fourth of their face. And sure, the eyes are the windows of the soul, but there's the nose, incidentally, is pretty important, and same with the mouth, and you just didn't know it. And so, you're looking around at a sea of people that traditionally, especially independent filmmaking, it's like the whole thing is the family you make. That's it. That's a huge part of it, is you look forward to the camaraderie, and you're kind of ushered away, and so that part, I'm excited for that to return. But I had also worked on some other stuff in pandemic, and it's not, there's a big loss in the human connection.
Yeah, just the fear of getting sick. It's like you're on a movie set and it's fun, but there's also this, don't get sick. And it just adds
to give someone some, you're like, don't be the one who comes in to like do a few days on the film, and then all of a sudden you brought the whole film down, because
I think if there's a hopeful component in it, it's both that from a storytelling perspective, it focuses everyone to align their values, hopefully, and articulate why they have to tell this story, because there's other things people could do with their lives, and getting sick or getting someone else sick is not worth it to tell a story, or rather you have to ask that question, like, what are the stories that must be told, not just that can be told? And then I think there are other things at an institutional level in film and TV production that needed to be looked at under a microscope anyway, safety things, how people are working, how long people are working, that hopefully there's a level of scrutiny that'll be brought to this that maybe won't go away, that will make that we won't return to the way it was, we'll return to something better, hopefully.
One thing, James, is that despite all of the heavy topics that you're dealing with in this film, it's, there's just a tone there that it makes it a movie I could imagine watching with a kid, and it's manageable without shying away from the realities of the world. And what was your approach, kind of in any realm, with with the way that it was shot and the music, and just how did you kind of combine these elements to get the tone that you were looking for this story?
Whether it's in film or TV work that I've done, I've never really delineated between like drama and comedy in my brain. I was like a Blockbuster Video kid. So there were definitely aisles, and this is where action was, and this is where this was. But I always found that really weird, because life is so blurry. I think, like The Sopranos was my favorite comedy for a while. It was also the best drama. It's sort of, that to me is life. It's like, in moments of greatest despair where you find the funniest moments, and vice versa. And I mean, there were so many moments with each of these actors here and the actors playing their daughters where I was both like crying or laughing. I mean, there were moments, I'm thinking like with Megan and Eden, who played her daughter. I mean, they're two of the most brilliant improvisers I've ever met. And it was so hot. And these were, it was a small movie. And I just took great joy in just stepping back and shutting up and just watching them and laughing my ass off, which was, I don't know, a gift from all of them to just bring their full selves, their darkness and their light to these characters, and to be so generous and vulnerable and so honest. So I was really grateful to all of them.
So Megan, yeah, you did play so well off of each other. Was there a lot of improv there?
I think it was almost completely improvised, right? And then there was another scene that didn't make it into the movie that was even, to me, it was it was even more fun, where we were in the bathroom, that scene, James. Yeah. And that was the one we shot first. And working with a little girl like that, and she's great and she's such a sweet kid, but we're like the old ancient, especially me, like decrepit, horrible humans that no child wants to be anywhere near. And so I just try to I don't know. I tried to not like put them in a position where they had to like talk to me at all. But then when I did that scene we did that first scene, and she just kind of like, because I was being really stupid in it. I was just saying like a bunch of dumb shit. And she was like, wait, what? And then she completely got into the spirit of it. And we had a lot of fun together. We did a whole bunch of different versions of it. And she just, went along with everything. She was really great. Really sweet little girl.
You see, like when you realize that kids can be so great at just yes-anding life in a way, like, are they just naturally wonderful improvisers? And something happens to us in adolescence or early adulthood where so many of us just lose that spark. So it's awesome to see it very much.
Yeah, she was so smart. It was really fun.
So yeah, more broadly, was there a lot of improv here? Because the dialogue did really seem very natural, and there was just, there was a good amount of just kind of conversations that you might have when you're a kid, or, the kind of back and forth between daughter and mother. How much of it was in the script and how much of it was improvised?
It was a mix. I mean, it was, it was a pretty tight structured script, but if people ever like, I mean, I love improv, and I really think part of why I love filmmaking is in collaboration and collaborating with real artists who have beautiful imaginations. So whatever they bring to the table, whatever their impulses or ideas are, I want to try to create a space for it and include it.
Well, thank you all very much. This was a really wonderful conversation, wonderful film, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.